Alright everybody, good evening. Something very interesting is starting to form around the Philadelphia Eagles heading into the 2026 season. And when you really break down everything surrounding this team right now, you can feel that the expectations inside Philadelphia are once again becoming massive. The schedule hasn't even officially dropped yet, but the early information already gives Eagles fans a reason to pay close attention, because this upcoming season could quietly set the stage for one of the most important years of the Nick Sirianni era. What stands out immediately is the way analysts and sportsbooks are already viewing this football team. Even after an uneven and frustrating finish last season, the Eagles are still being placed among the true elite teams in the NFL. Vegas projected the Eagles at 10.5 wins, putting them in the same tier as teams like the Chiefs, Bills, Packers, Seahawks, Lions, and 49ers. That tells you everything about how the league still views the talent inside this roster. People outside Philadelphia may have questioned parts of last year, but they have not stopped respecting the Eagles as a legitimate contender. And here's where things become even more fascinating for Eagles fans. Based on projected win totals across the league, the Eagles are expected to have the 7th easiest schedule in the NFL. That is a massive development considering what this team went through last season. The Eagles faced what many considered one of the toughest schedules in football, and there were stretches where it genuinely felt like they never had an opportunity to breathe. Week after week felt like playoff football. There was constant pressure, constant physical battles, and a roster that was already dealing with inconsistency never really had time to settle into rhythm. This year could be completely different. The Eagles will still face major opponents. There's no hiding from that. At home, they'll host teams like the Rams, Seahawks, Texans, Colts, Steelers, and Panthers, while also handling NFC East matchups against the Cowboys, Giants, and Commanders. On the road, they'll have difficult trips against the San Francisco 49ers, Arizona Cardinals, Jacksonville Jaguars, Tennessee Titans, Chicago Bears, and divisional opponents inside the NFC East. But compared to other teams around the NFL, especially inside the division, Philadelphia is actually positioned very well. The Cowboys, Giants, and Commanders are all projected to have significantly harder schedules despite the Eagles finishing first in the division last year. That's an important detail because normally the division winner gets punished with a brutal first place schedule. Somehow the Eagles managed to avoid the absolute gauntlet many fans were expecting, and honestly the timing could not be better. This offense enters 2026 with major questions that still need answers. There's excitement, but there's also uncertainty. Jalen Hurts is coming off an up and down season where consistency became one of the biggest conversations surrounding him. Once again, there are changes happening around him offensively, and Eagles fans know how exhausting that cycle has become. Hurts has now dealt with constant coordinator turnover throughout his career, and that instability matters more than people admit. Now the offense is preparing to work under Sean Mannion, a coordinator who has never called plays before, and is expected to introduce a completely new scheme. That alone creates pressure. New terminology, new concepts, new timing, new responsibilities. Teams don't always click immediately under those conditions, even talented ones. And then you look at the offensive personnel itself. The offensive line still has talent, but health and consistency became real concerns last season. The run game shockingly lost its dominance at times. Saquon Barkley, who had one of the most historic rushing seasons in recent memory back in 2024, saw a noticeable drop in efficiency last year. There were too many runs where defenders were already in the backfield before the play even developed. For a team that wants to control games physically, that simply cannot continue. At wide receiver, there are also major storylines building. The growing belief that A.J. Brown could eventually be traded continues to create tension around the future of the offense. And if younger players are forced into larger roles sooner than expected, the pressure increases dramatically. Kyle Lemon is already being discussed as someone who could become a major contributor as a rookie, while Eli Sturz is another name expected to have a meaningful role in the offense moving forward. So when you connect all these dots together, the importance of an easier schedule becomes obvious. This is not just about stacking wins, it's about giving the offense time to evolve without immediately being thrown into survival mode every single week. It's about allowing Hurts and this coaching staff to establish rhythm, confidence, and identity before the season reaches its hardest stretches. Meanwhile, the defense may quietly become the stabilizing force of this football team. Vic Fangio now has a defense loaded with experienced players who understand the system better entering another season together. The under-the-radar trade for Jonathan Grard during the draft didn't generate massive headlines nationally, but internally it's viewed as an important addition. The front office clearly believes this defense is closer to being complete than the offense right now. The biggest concern defensively appears to be safety, but outside of that, there's legitimate confidence in this group. And if the defense can start fast while the offense develops chemistry, the Eagles could find themselves stacking wins early in the season. That matters because everybody in Philadelphia understands what home field advantage means at Lincoln Financial Field in January. The atmosphere changes completely during playoff football. The cold weather, the crowd noise, the pressure. Very few environments in the NFL compare to it. If this team can take advantage of a favorable schedule and secure home playoff games again, the Eagles instantly become one of the most dangerous postseason teams in football. And there's another layer to this entire situation that fans are starting to notice. The NFL clearly understands the Eagles remain one of the biggest television draws in the league. Expectations are already growing that Philadelphia could receive multiple primetime games once the schedule officially releases. There's even speculation about a possible international game, potentially against San Francisco or another marquee opponent. Whether people love the Eagles or hate them, they watch them. That has become reality around the NFL. The pressure is building again in Philadelphia. The expectations are growing again. And this roster feels like it's entering a season where excuses will disappear very quickly. The talent is there. The opportunity is there. The schedule might finally cooperate. Now the question becomes whether this team can actually put everything together before the window gets even tighter. Because if the offense finds rhythm faster than expected and the defense plays at the level many inside the organization believe it can, the Eagles may quietly position themselves right back in the center of the Super Bowl conversation again. But do you believe this easier schedule will actually help the Eagles return to dominance in 2026? Or do you think the biggest problems on this roster still haven't been solved yet? The most dangerous part about this entire situation is that a lot of people outside Philadelphia are underestimating how motivated this Eagles team could become after everything that happened last season. Inside the building, there's clearly an understanding that 2026 is not supposed to be another transition year. The front office is acting like a team that still believes its championship window is wide open. And when you really analyze the moves, the schedule, and the pressure surrounding the roster, you start realizing this season could define the future of several important people inside the organization. What makes this especially intriguing is the contrast between the stability on defense and the uncertainty on offense. Normally, when people discuss the Eagles, the conversation starts with offensive firepower, but entering this year, it honestly feels like Vic Fangio's side of the football may carry the higher level of trust. That says a lot considering how explosive this offense was expected to be not too long ago. The Eagles know they cannot afford another season where the offense looks disconnected for long stretches. Last year, there were moments where the identity completely disappeared. The running game wasn't consistently dominant, explosive plays became less frequent, and too many drives stalled because timing and rhythm simply never felt natural. For a franchise built around physicality and aggression, those stretches were frustrating to watch. That's why the development of this new offensive system under Sean Mannion becomes one of the biggest storylines of the entire NFL season. There's pressure anytime a first-time play caller takes over a contender, but in Philadelphia, that pressure becomes even heavier because expectations are never patient. Fans want results immediately. They want an offense that attacks. They want creativity. They want balance. Most importantly, they want consistency around Jalen Hurts again. And speaking of Hurts, this may quietly become one of the most important years of his career. There's no question he still has the respect of the locker room, but after an uneven season, people are watching closely to see how he responds. The Eagles are still fully invested in him as the franchise quarterback, yet everybody understands that elite quarterbacks eventually have to elevate the system around them regardless of coaching changes. Fair or unfair, that's how the NFL works. Hurts entering another season with offensive adjustments only increases the spotlight surrounding every performance. The encouraging part for Eagles fans is that the organization seems aware of the need to support him better this year. An easier schedule early in the season could give the offense a chance to build confidence before entering tougher stretches. If the Eagles can establish momentum quickly, everything changes psychologically for this team. Confidence inside Philadelphia matters more than people realize. When this team starts believing, the energy becomes completely different. And then there's the possibility that several younger players could emerge much faster than expected. Kyle Lemon continues generating buzz internally because of the potential impact he could bring immediately. Whenever a rookie starts receiving this much attention before the season even begins, fans naturally become curious about how large the role could become. The same goes for Eli Sturz, who many believe could become another important piece in the offense if opportunities open up throughout the year. But all of this also circles back to the uncertainty surrounding A.J. Brown's future. The conversation around a possible trade continues hanging over the organization, and even if nothing happens immediately, speculation alone creates distractions. Brown has been one of the emotional leaders of this offense, and losing a player with that level of talent and intensity would completely change the identity of the unit. The Eagles understand that, fans understand that, and until clarity arrives, the storyline is not going away. Still, despite the offensive questions, there's a growing sense that this team may actually benefit from the adversity it experienced last year. Sometimes expectations become healthier after disappointment. Last season, the Eagles carried enormous hype and constantly looked like a team trying to survive pressure rather than embrace it. This year feels different. There's still pressure, but it feels more focused, more controlled. Almost like the organization understands exactly where the weaknesses are instead of pretending they don't exist. Defensively, the Eagles appear determined to become a more complete and disciplined football team again. Fangio's influence continues shaping the mentality of this roster, and there's confidence that continuity inside the system will create noticeable improvement. The addition of Jonathan Grard may not have dominated headlines nationally, but internally, those types of moves matter because they strengthen depth and flexibility over the course of a long season, and depth could become one of the deciding factors in the NFC. When you look around the conference, there are talented teams everywhere. The Rams are projected to be elite again. The 49ers remain dangerous. The Lions continue rising. Green Bay has high expectations. Seattle is coming off a championship season. There are no shortcuts through the NFC right now, but the Eagles are still firmly inside that group because the roster itself remains loaded with talent across multiple positions. That's why the schedule conversation matters so much. If Philadelphia truly has one of the easier paths among contenders, there's an opportunity here to stack wins while other NFC teams beat each other up. And in a conference race where playoff seeding can completely alter January football, that advantage becomes massive. Imagine the scenario where the Eagles enter late December already positioned near the top of the conference standings. Suddenly the pressure shifts toward everyone else. Suddenly teams have to travel into Philadelphia again. Suddenly Lincoln Financial Field becomes part of the equation in the playoffs once more. Eagles fans know how different this team feels at home during postseason football. The energy becomes overwhelming. Opposing offenses struggle with communication. Momentum swings happen fast. And emotionally, the Eagles feed off that environment as much as any team in the NFL. Right now, the pieces are all sitting there in front of Philadelphia. The favorable schedule, the talented defense, the opportunity for offensive growth, the possibility of younger players breaking out, the chance for Jalen Hurts to silence critics. Everything is lined up for this team to make another serious run if they can avoid the inconsistency that haunted them before. But at the same time, there's absolutely no margin for complacency. If the offense struggles early again, the pressure in Philadelphia will become relentless